Welcome to Dog Moms Do Business,
a podcast where two lifelong friends find sisterhood in business, life, and being crazy millennial dog moms.
We're your hosts, Ellen Broen
And Jasmine Jonte.
And today's episode is all about
all things Fourth Wing and the Iron Flame. Because one intro last episode was not enough. Too much to talk about.
So much to talk about. So much. So if you didn't catch our last episode, I told Ellen the end of last year, as I was reading Fourth Wing, that she simply must. That there is no other option but to read this series. And right now there's only 2 books in the series, Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. And you got into them a week ago.
And I'm done with both of them and have reread both of them. Yeah.
It is epic.
Mm-hmm.
It is an epic series. And I'm into fantasy, though. I should say that. Like, I've been into fantasy for a while, especially fantasy with a little steamy romance.
Mm-hmm.
But are you into fantasy?
Oh, yeah. I think my favorite series growing up was like, well, the thing that came to mind for some reason was Lemony Snicket, and that is not at all a well, it's kind of fantasy, but it's more,
It's
I don't know, adventure
suspense.
or something. But Harry Potter, I mean, like,
Yeah.
Harry Potter was probably what started the love
Yeah.
for both of us.
And you read Lord of the Rings.
I tried to read Lord of the Rings when I was younger, and I didn't make it all the way through the series, but I did love it. It's just like a, high vocabulary.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fantasy genre and especially the fantasy romance genre have always been a favorite. Name of the Wind was also a huge, like, okay, this is a genre that I officially love.
Romantasy. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
If not, we should start a trend. Romantasy. Yeah.
I was just talking to my brother earlier. He also said sci-fantasy is a genre, which I had never heard of before. But
it reminds me of like Star Trek and stuff.
Could be. Well, it's like sci-fi, but like there's like mythical creature, like those kind of mystical creatures rather than just aliens.
Right.
But yeah, I think without romance in the fantasy, like without some sort of thing in it, I don't always love them as much. Like Name of the Wind, like, is not really a romance, but it's got like some really steamy sex in the middle of it that makes the book for me. Like, I'm like, without that, I would have loved it. With it, I'm obsessed with it. And so that's what kind of makes the Fourth Wing and the Iron Flame what they are, because not only are they a really epic series, which I would describe for anyone who hasn't read the books, I would say it's Hunger Games meets Game of Thrones in terms of the plot lines. Like, Hunger Games is kind of how the first book unfolds, where there's
a love triangle
ish between the boy next door
that
and
you've known forever,
and then the
bad
untrustworthy
boy.
guy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say Pete is a bad boy by any means, but
yeah, that's true.
It's still like a love triangle where it's like, who you were versus who you're becoming. You're thrown into basically the Hunger Games, where you're like going to get killed if you don't like change who you are and figure out everything. And there's conspiracy in the government,
kind of like Divergent too.
I haven't read or seen Divergent, so
yeah. So I mean, similarly, it's kind of around this whole government political theme. And I think that's one of the reasons I love it too, is like there's this kind of like main storyline that's going on with the main character Violet, right? And how she, like you're saying, she's thrust into this war college where she has to learn to be a ninja, what feels like a ninja or an assassin, this really like lethal weapon of a human. But then you also have this storyline around romance, but you also have this storyline of like the bigger picture,
right?
Kind of like, I don't know, it's like in Scandal, when they like uncover.
Also haven't seen Scandal.
Oh my god,
I know, I'm not getting any references today.
Uncovering like the underbelly of the government and how there's this public narrative that's actually going on, and then there's this true narrative of what's going on, and there's that element to it, and then there's also just like her story as the heroine, and just becoming letting go of who she thought she was and really stepping into who she wants to be.
Mm-hmm. Has to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but I think she chooses it in the end too.
Yes. Yeah.
I think she chooses it. So all that to say, can we get into the spoilers now?
I was going to say, we need a spoilers warning before we get going. And we also have to acknowledge a very exciting monumental occasion. This is our very first video episode. So if you are listening to us on your usual podcast app, thank you. But also come find us over in the YouTube worlds, because we shared at the end of last year that one of our goals was to start incorporating video form and growing on, the YouTube platform and all of that. So we have begun. Hello to those of us watching. We are live. We are here.
I'm not sure if I'm supposed to look at you or if I'm supposed to look at the camera. What is the
etiquette that I have seen is you just keep looking at each other, and then if there's a point you want to make to the audience, you can look at them. So let us know if it's awkward, if we're ignoring you and not looking at you on the camera, or if it's awkward if we're just speaking to camera rather than to each other.
This is maybe why they have those specific camera angles.
Yes.
So you can kind of
Yes, that's another thing I've observed of the entertainment podcasts that I follow that do post online. They'll have the straight on angles right at your face from two different things, and then they'll cut to between the two, and then they'll have the middle camera that's just like this, where the two of you are in frame, and they'll edit amongst those angles, which we ain't that fancy yet, y'all. We got one angle, and that's all you get.
That's what you're getting.
But so spoilers, if you have not read it, both of the books, we will talk about both of these books. And trust me when I say, if you have not finished the Iron Flame, do not listen to this, because the end of Iron Flame will change everything. So
I don't even remember. It's been so long.
Well, then I'll tell you.
Okay, great.
So if you have been warned, get out of here if you haven't read it.
Okay. Starting with Fourth Wing.
Fourth Wing. Gosh.
What were your OMG OMG moments? Yeah.
I mean, my brain went right to the sex. I feel like
there's multiple sex scenes though.
Well, not even just sex, the kisses. That first kiss when she was taken over by the dragon's feelings when they forgot to block them out to do their dragon dirty.
Yes.
And she had just received her gift, and that opening had just opened, and she was just totally horny and almost went into town with Liam. Then she goes outside and finds him, and they have that kiss. I think that totally changed the book for me, of this is a really great story, to ooh,
oh wow,
I am so into this.
Yeah.
So what about you?
Yeah, I think that was really solid. I think all of those scenes, those steamy scenes, were really solid.
Her writing
around the steaming scenes. How some books you read and you're like, wait, what happened? Wait, how did they get from the bed to the desk?
Her choreography.
And you're just like, I'm confused. I was visualizing this, but now I can't quite see how it wasn't like that.
No.
It was very much like you could visualize every single second, which makes me think she wrote this.
And it's, go ahead.
She wrote this knowing it was going to be either a TV series or a movie series.
And it was also done in a relatable sex way, because I feel like sometimes they'll have sex up against a wall or something. And I'm like, how are you entering at that angle? There's just positions where I don't understand. And then she tended to she would vary the positions a lot and vary the angles of the kiss in different ways and all that. And they made sense to me. Like you said, she choreographed them in a way that I could follow and understand. And also they felt like a normal person. Yes, a normal person could have that sex and not some athletic superhuman that can do all these crazy angles.
There was even a part in, I think, the first sex scene where they're on the desk and then he's trying to go in and she's like, they couldn't make the angle work.
Fucking desk.
And so he says, Xaden, who says fucking desk. And she's like, exactly my thoughts, and then moves to the bed or somewhere else. I can't remember. But sex scenes were really, really good. But I think what made the whole book for me, though, was not the sex scenes. It was the fact that, if you haven't read it, that's fine. You can still listen to us. But I think what made it for me is that you have these two characters who have dragons who are mated. And so because the dragons are mated and the riders of those dragons are now, in a sense, they're all caught in the same web. You can't disintegrate one from another. You're bonded forever. If one dragon dies, its rider dies. And if one dragon dies, its mate often dies. And so it's like they're all in this together. Like we're all going to win or we're all going to die. Yeah. And also because of that bonding, dragons and riders can communicate telepathically, which means because you have this mate in play, you can now, Violet and Xaden, the riders of the dragons, can now telepathically communicate as well. And I think as a woman, right, so much of what we struggle with in romance is like, I just wish he could understand me. Like, I just wish he could understand my emotions. I wish that he could relate and like be more emotional. And men, typically more logical, more focused, they just think differently than us. So it's almost like this secret desire I think a lot of women have. Like, I wish he could just get in my head and understand my emotions and see things through my eyes. And that literally is what's created through that bond.
That is super true. Very, very true. And I also second the connection with the dragons being a really big element of that just separates this book from other books, fantasy books that I've read, because it's awesome. Game of Thrones and like those kind of other books and series that have dragons involved. Of course, it's always just awesome. But to have a relationship with the dragon and for the dragons to feel like real character, to feel like they are humanized in a way where like Taryn is one of my favorite characters. Oh yeah. He is the grumpy old man who's been around and doesn't give a fuck about these 20-something-year-olds hormones. And like, he's like, he knows the bigger picture of what's going on and he's playing chess while they're playing checkers. And like, I just love his sarcasm and like his humor, and to have a humanized dragon without it feeling a little bit like, I'm not picturing the dragon moving its mouth and talking like a person. That eliminates the kind of
cartoonish.
Yeah. It feels like, okay, well, if we're transported to this other world, it makes sense to me that dragons would telepathically communicate and not, that checks out, It's,
and just even like being able to have thoughts be a part of the storyline, because I think a lot of authors, they have to use actions and movements and words. And of course you can hear the thoughts of whoever the character is that's speaking, but we not only get access to her thoughts, we get access to some of Xaden's thoughts as well. So we get access to Taryn's thoughts and the dragon's thoughts. And I think that's just like adds this additional element of both like knowing those characters well, but also they're not sharing everything.
Right.
So like there's still this element of, some things, but not everything. But yeah, to your point about like having the dragons be part of the characters. It's like in Harry Potter, it's like the difference between Dobby and Fang, the dog, or like Dobby and a Thestral who can't communicate. So, just a really cool dynamic there.
And I feel like, speaking to the first book specifically, because I have different theories formulating around each book that like I left with, but I don't know if you have any like guesses about what's coming, but one thing that I predict is that Brennan, so we find out at the very end of the first book, Brennan, her brother, is alive and he's been fighting for her, building the revolution while, he's been away for the last 6 years. And of his story that we know, he died and Taryn's previous rider burnt himself out, bringing Brennan back to life. Now, the only reason someone would bring someone fully back to life is what?
They're in love with them. That was my theory too.
So Naolin, his previous rider, was in love with Brennan, burnt himself out saving him.
Yes.
What I believe is that Naolin went venom to save Brennan and broke Taryn's heart to the point Taryn never wanted to bond anyone ever again, because when they become venom, they don't have that bond the same anymore.
No.
Because they get their power from the earth instead. Yeah. I think Naolin is venom and might be one of the sages or higher.
Interesting.
And Violet's going to have to face Naolin.
I think Brennan might have to face Naolin. I think
true.
Yeah, I think there's more storyline to be developed for Brennan. I think that's
for
what's
sure.
coming. I think there's going to be a lot that
of
comes
stuff
there.
to fill in.
Yeah. From the first book, my prediction has to be around something to do with who Andarna's parents were.
Yes.
I don't know who they are.
And
I don't know where that's going.
Why did she say she was going to hatch? Like she like had control over when she hatched.
I don't remember that.
That's in the second book. So you'll get that when she fills in, like when they find out more about her breed and why she's different. But it's just really interesting because she is her own den. Mm-hmm. Like we find that out in the second book, that she's not one of the 6 dens. She's not a black dragon. She's her own chameleon dragon. And her family line has been in dormancy for the last like 600 years. And she's the one bringing it back because of Violet specifically.
I don't remember that.
So that is, I think we need a lot more information about both Brennan and Andarna. Because Andarna, I think she's going to have a huge role with Violet in like curing the venin. Like since jumping into the second book, spoiler, Xaden goes venin. Did you remember that?
No, I didn't.
Oh yeah. Xaden, in the last page of the book, he went venin to not die because he thought Violet was dying. And so he was like, I need to protect her. And he was out of everything and he was fighting the sage.
Yeah.
And he draws a little bit of power from the earth to not die, kills the sage. Violet brings the wards back up around Bezgaeth, and the wars, or, the battle is won. But now he's fucking venin and you can't stop being venin. So, I think that that Violet and Andarna are going to have to be the ones that figure out the cure. And speaking of secret venin, my guess is also that Violet's father went venin.
Really?
And not because of power hungry or whatever, but I think something happened. He was researching all sorts of things. He was looking for the cure. And not because of some other thing, but one, his behavior got weirder and weirder after Brennan died.
More reclusive, probably like trying to protect them and like back away because he was venin. And then also he was trying to find a cure. So maybe he like was patient 1 or patient 0 of like, I'm going to make myself go venin so I can figure out how to cure this thing, because he knew all about it. And his mom or his wife knew also and tried to protect the kids and blah, 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 blah. And then he ended up, maybe she killed him to protect them. Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's something about her parents, because also some weird things happen at the end of book 2 where her mother is the one, she sacrifices herself to imbue the ward stone full of power, but she has to use Sloane as a conduit rather than just directly putting her own power into it. She uses Sloane as the siphon of like, suck my power into the ward stone and then I die. Why would she need some sort of intermediary person between her power and the ward stone? I don't know why. So maybe she had some venin, something going on. But I do think something's going on with her parents that they knew, and maybe one of them or both of them were venin.
Yeah.
So I know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Venin theories
abound.
Well, so in terms of, I want to talk about Xaden for a minute. I'm kind of obsessed with him.
So is she.
Indeed.
The thing about Xaden and like their whole dynamic reminds me of similar dynamics I had with people around that age.
In their 20s, yes.
You know, how like, I don't know what it's like when you're like in college and you're in class with like the person you like.
Oh yeah.
You know, and you're like, oh, it's Tuesdays. I have class brass on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
You're like,
music major,
hello. And then you're like, oh, like he's in my class brass. And like,
you just have that like, kind of, you can sense them, your head tingles
when
they're in the room.
That's like the whole thing is like, you know, she could sense him when he came in the room. She could, and then once they actually have the dragons connect, when she's connected to her dragon, now it kind of makes more sense because their dragons are mated, they can literally hear each other.
Right. And sense each other.
So you can always sense each other, but it's absolutely like that when at the beginning of a relationship, or you're just like,
And just that hormonal stage in your 20s,
Yeah.
everything is so intense.
Yes. And you're just like, you can like sense that energy and, you know, even like sexual experiences back then, there was just like this.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Like it was just that can't get enough of you thing, which hopefully comes back around.
Hopefully.
But it's just, I think it's just something about our development.
Yeah.
Like our physical development
Yeah.
during that stage that makes it so different. Yeah. So
And
I could relate to that.
I totally could relate to that too. And like you said, like the whole like just sensing them and feeling that kind of like magnetic power from them felt real to me. Like the way that she wrote about it, it didn't feel like I had to be in some magical world for her to be able to sense he's in the room and where he is. And like when they lock eyes and have those moments or whatever, where he's like staring her down in his serious expression and she's like I hate him at first.
But like his cockiness, some of his like qualities also remind me of men I've dated.
Yes.
Like the cockiness, the
Intensity.
the intense. Oh yeah. Me and for whatever. I don't
You love
why do
intense
I like
men. So do
intense
I.
men?
So do I.
It's so weird because I
know.
am just not.
But
like-
opposites attract.
Brad Hart. Homie's intense.
Ditto with mine. Yeah.
So
we like our intense men.
yeah, I mean, just something about like the intensity and just the swag.
And don't give a fuck. I feel one thing about Xaden that definitely resonates with Matt is he doesn't give a fuck. Like he's not people pleasing. He doesn't care if he offends somebody. He's accomplishing the job and he doesn't like the mission is the most important thing, and me coddling you or saying it in a kind way does not matter. Not a priority. So I don't know, those qualities definitely like some of the dark sides of Xaden. I was like, I can see that in Matt and I can resonate with that. But also like their dynamic as a couple, like their kind of toxic shit. That was also like, yup, I can relate to that. Of like the trust stuff, you know, like him with the
especially
secrets.
in the second book. Yeah.
Yeah, him with the secrets and the, you know, he just, it made a lot more sense once we understood what his second signet was with the whole mind reading thing. It was also interesting because it did feel like I do need to go back now that I've read the end of the second book to go back and read the first book after that, because then I can understand how their relationship was built in a different way. Because now I know he was reading her mind at the beginning stages to know that like he could lean in for a kiss because she wanted it, rather than he was like had some skin in the game and was like,
and that's why he
risking-
can be so cocky
yeah, fucking A.
because he knows what's going on with everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a key piece that I think I was missing, obviously, when I was reading the first book, that I'm like, oh, like that's why he could trust her from the beginning with the tree thing. I was like, why did he trust her? If he like actually wanted to kill her, why the hell would he let her get away when she literally found him in a you know,
Even,
executable
like,
offense?
He's like, I wanted you since the moment I saw you on the parapet,
Lies.
right? Which because she was, if you look back and you read what she thinks that first moment, she's like, that is the most beautiful man I've ever seen. Like he is exquisite. And she like talks about every, the rebellion relic and like everything about him. Yeah. If I heard somebody say that shit about me, I'd be.
But he's can't hear the words. He can hear the intentions.
That's right. Yeah.
So, but he could feel that attraction, probably. I'm guessing if he could tell that she wanted to kiss him, maybe then he could get that vibe. But I think when we find out later in the second book that his mom or her mom called in the favor, so like when she spared all of the marked ones' lives in order for them to join the quadrant, and he was responsible for all of them staying, true to Navarre. She also said, and I'm going to call in a favor one day. The favor that she called in was to protect Violet. And so the only reason he didn't kill her on the parapet or whatever was because her mom said, stay the fuck away from her and protect her. But then it still just didn't fill in the gaps of like, the whole him finding her on the tree and like the kind of just sarcastic bantery sort of relationship they built from the beginning. Like he said he wanted to fucking kill her, and then they build this like friendship along the way, even though they kind of both hate each other. So the intrinsic, the like mind reading thing, I think is the only thing that makes the beginning of the relationship make sense to me.
Yeah.
Because it didn't seem likely, even if they had a physical chemistry, I don't think it would have become what it did unless he could have read her mind and built a lot of
confirmed trust from his side.
Right.
Yeah.
And I loved, going back to the toxic dynamic, I loved that like they mirrored each other's shit so much. Cause like, you know, he was the one like keeping secrets and like broke her trust and stuff. And then she like later on was keeping secrets and not fully disclosing to him. And like every time it was just like a ping pong back and forth. And I loved like, you know, watching, I can totally relate to that sort of thing happening in like your early 20s where you're just like, you're doing this and you broke my trust. And then you turn around and do the exact same thing and they're like, and you just did it right back. And like, but like what I loved was instead of it spiraling out and being something like what happened in my life where we'd have like shitty fights about it, they would have mature fights about it, which I felt like, okay, I'm glad that I'm not getting like triggered in this book by like shit from my past. Like they did the things that we did from our past, but they handled it with maturity and they would, you know, fight it out on the sparring mat and then fuck.
I mean, I think when you're confronted with death every day, you don't have time for petty nonsense, you know? Yeah. Agreed. I also think the Dane.
Oh, we gotta talk about Dane.
The Dane Xaden comparison dynamic was really cool though, because it is true. It's like we as women, it's like they say, why does the nice guy always finish last? And I think that might be some of the reason is the nice guy is like, oh honey, I got it.
Protects you.
Oh honey, I got you. Which there's like a feminine part of us that wants to be protected. But there's also this warrior parts of us that like wants to be like, you can fucking do it. And I think it's like Xaden does a really good job of knowing when to activate which archetype within himself.
He did after some time because it feels like he like believed in her at the beginning and let her do her thing and survived first year. And then he starts falling in love with her and then he starts kind of being like Dane and wants to protect her and not let her do anything because if anything happened to you, you'd be the death of me. Like that whole thing came to surface and then he had to learn to like love her and want to protect her in the most crucial of times, but like find that balance of like believing that and trusting that she has got it. You know?
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. That's I think that was a healthy relationship dynamic that I liked modeling. And one of my family members is also a fantasy reader, and I reached out to her to be like, you should totally read this book. And she's like, I find fantasy romance a little bit like toxic. Like I find like the dark, when you're attracted to your enemy and that whole
friends
domination.
To enemy, enemies to friends or whatever.
To like, you know, wanting to be dominated and like all that kind of thing, like she just finds that problematic. And I don't know, I wanted to bring that to this conversation because I was like, that's intriguing. Like, because when I read it, I'm just like, I'm all in. I'm like, yep, I would love to be dominated like that, thrown around a bit, you know. Like, I am a feminist to the core. I am like, you know, loud and proud about all of it. And like, give me that kind of sex life. I will take it. If there's respect and trust built in, then no, all bets are off. Like, throw me around, you know? But, you know, his whole, is he going to kill me or does he want to fuck me thing? Like, some people might argue that that's a little bit, and she even calls herself out in the book. Like, what is it with me and being attracted to toxic men who kind of want to kill me?
She does. Yeah, she does call herself out for the toxicity thing. Yeah, it's hard for me to answer because I feel like it's more than just like, are they toxic on the whole? Like maybe like one little pattern they have is toxic. But I also just go back to like, these people are watching their friends die every fucking day. If you're seeing your friend die every fucking day, you're just like, okay, let's play because like life is too short almost. Yeah, I always come back to that.
Yeah.
Just which like, who cares if it's toxic for a month with this guy? Like, the sex is great.
Yeah. The reality of that kind of hit me in book 2 when they started partnering with the Flyers, with the Griffin Flyers, because they talked about the differences in their training and how, you know, in Basgath, riders die in the first day, like in conscription day, like they're just dying off the parapet. Whereas, you know, with the Griffin Flyers, you know, every layer of it is meant to keep as many people alive. So they walk challenging things and they do challenging things and they challenge each other on the mat, but no one dies in the process. And, you know, she was exploring, what does that do to me to have become this accustomed to death versus somebody who's training for war, but like, you're not losing squad mates every day. You're not losing your student friends through the process. So war is different than your experience in war school. And I don't know, I was thinking about like, what's the better, you know, is there a better way? Like, should they not be killing all of the freaking students along the way? Or, you know, especially when riders are decreasing in numbers.
Yeah. I mean, my natural inclination is with the Flyer way, you know, where you're not killing people, but you're giving people the opportunity to succeed rather than putting every challenge against them to see if they can succeed in spite of.
Yeah. And that's how military training is in real life, where it's like you're not intending to kill people at boot camp. So,
yeah, that's my intention. But I also think you guys have griffins, you don't have dragons.
Yeah. Dragons are a whole other everything. And then in terms of second book, how much do you remember? Because I know you're just rereading.
I mean, I remember that he was an intensic of some sort. I remember that, you know, there's the thing with that king in the other land.
The challenge.
I know that they had venom around. I know about the ward stone. I know that they had to have the fires breathe the drag.
Do you remember
dragons.
the torturing too?
I remember parts of the torturing. I remember Dane was involved there, and that Varish guy who I just wanted to fucking die. And
also, conspiracy theory, I think Varish might be venom and isn't dead.
Okay. I can see that.
They killed him.
Did Barlow die?
No.
That's what I thought.
He was brought back.
He was brought back.
But he wasn't brought back. He just wasn't dead. He just showed up back at the school.
I remember that. I'm saying at the end. By the end of the second book.
So at the very end of the second book, Xaden goes in the middle of the night to Jack's cell because they like captured him when he broke the ward stone. They like captured him, knocked him out, and put him in the cell for questioning. And Xaden went to him being like, what's the fucking cure? I don't want to be this. And he's like, sucks to suck. You're a venom now. And welcome to the fam.
Because Jack's a venom. Yeah.
But so going back to, I want to focus a little on Dane and Varish, because Dane, I don't know, what was your journey with like hating Dane, trusting Dane? When did it switch for you?
I don't know if I still hate Dane. I don't know if I hate Dane.
Oh no, I don't hate him anymore. I mean, he switched sides, so.
But even now when he's just, I mean, at the end of the first book, right, he touched Violet's face without her consent. That allowed him to get her memories. And then because of that, he sent a bunch of the Rebellion Relic people into the war games.
And got people killed.
Right.
Important people.
So the thing is, I don't even really hate him then.
Really?
Really. I think he's extremely misguided. I think he's been growing up with a colonel for a dad who he loves and trusts, and all he's wanted his whole life is to just be the significance that his dad has and like have this signet and have this power and be a great writer. And so, you know, can I see the error of the amount of pride that he has? Yes. But I'm also like, I kind of get it, you know, and
his dad is the evil one, really.
Yeah, I really think his dad is like...
He's the one that sent all those assassins against Violet. And said, like, dead people secrets die with dead people.
And he also is the one who cleaned out the outpost.
Right.
The war games.
Right.
So I think, you know, I think he's just very, very misguided, which I think is why he eventually turns in book 2.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I have empathy for Dane more than I think I've listened to a few commentaries on the books, and a lot of people just like have it out for Dane. Like
it's like Nate and Ted Lasso. People like hate on Nate and Ted Lasso. And I think it's the same. If you're hating on Nate, you're kind of missing the whole fucking point of Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Like, it's second chances. It's letting people, make a mistake and then pick themselves up and move on.
Yeah.
And I think it's like the same thing here. It's really easy to hate on Dane.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, you could tell throughout the whole first book, like how confused he was by Violet's hate for him. And into the second book, after, Liam died because of him, he understood and wanted to understand more of like he had fucked up and that he needed to right a wrong, but she wouldn't even let him near him to do that. So there was guilt, there was some sense of self-awareness of like, I've done something, I thought I did something right. It didn't go the way I thought it would go. My dad did something I didn't think he would do. And now I've lost my best friend. I think, number one, like Violet probably had to come to that realization that as much as she changed in the first year of being at War College, so did Dane. And like, I think that was a huge realization for her to like understand that trust changes, when people change, how you trust people and all that kind of stuff changes. And the fact that, Dane was operating from this story that Xaden was the absolute enemy to end all enemies. And he was trying to protect her. He was doing anything and everything, misguided or not, to protect her. And so that I agree that I was very frustrated by his actions. Like I was just like, he's just acting like, the misguided older brother that just can't get a clue of like, wake the fuck up. She is the heroine. Like get out of her way. Kind of like I had a lot of frustration toward him, but I would agree. I wouldn't say I hated him. He was just such a frustrating point, but I did see him when Varish was torturing her and he brought Dane in to read her thoughts and take the information that he needed from her. I had a total gut feeling that he was going to do what he did. And, even when he like gave the partial information, like there was a moment where she pushed all of these memories of like what happened at the outpost so that he could see it and believe her. But what he took was like something that Varish could like, find useful. And she was like, are you fucking kidding me? I just gave you all of those memories and things, and that's the like little string that you pull out so you can please Varish. And then he goes and kills Varish. Like I was like, that was a perfectly executed little scene.
Yep.
But oh my God, that torture scene and then Liam coming back. So I want to also ask, what do you think Violet's extra signet is? Because I think she has a second signet. And the author said that it was obvious in the second book.
Well, it's been a while since I read the second book, so don't say anything. Let me see if I can come to it on my own.
Think about the odd things that she experienced in the second book. One being Liam being a dead person.
And she's talking to
him through torture.
Yeah. I mean, maybe she can talk to the dead.
Maybe.
That's a thing.
That is a thing.
I don't know.
That would be helpful with the venom.
Yeah, I'll just have to read it again.
The other thing I was thinking was that one time, I think it was throne room sex.
Wait.
That,
y'all. Can we have a moment? Y'all. Throne room sex? Wow. I've never done like, is it called cosplay or whatever?
Cosplay is like costume. You dress up in costume.
Yeah, like I've never done that, but I was just like, wow. Like I like this series so much.
That you would dress up as Violet?
I was like, okay, maybe Halloween. But like,
ooh, that's a good idea.
You know what I mean? But I was like, wow.
Yeah.
This is so good.
Yeah. Just you could dress up for sex or something?
No, I was just like
role play.
I was just like, I remember like reading that scene and just like the emotional element of the scene, not just the physical element.
The fact that he didn't finish himself and all that.
Yeah. And just like how everything just like, it reminds me of Harry Potter, of just like, it is a fucking masterpiece. And I don't know how she did it. Like, I don't know how she planned all of these things out to just zhink right at the right moment. And the throne scene was one of those moments I was like, there are so many themes. There are so many like different layers of this coming together all at once. It is a masterpiece.
Yeah. And not only in the masterful sex writing that she does, the romantic writing, but also, you know, again, speaking to like meeting women's kind of core needs, her insecurity, because she had just had this fight with Kat, his ex, and like Kat was spewing all this shit to like get in her head during the fight, being like, you know, drawing out insecurities and jealousy and all that kind of stuff. And for him to take her to the throne and do what he did and say what he said, it's just like validation on the core like feminine level of just like affirming and validating, like, you are my woman. What does he say? Like, my house, my throne, my woman.
So I don't know if I can remember, but like, just like, yeah, all of that. And then to just not worry about himself. And like, you know, like so many men, it's like, if you have a moment of insecurity, all they say is like, that's not attractive.
Yeah. They like get it, like they get turned off by it. And
it's just like, I don't say that to you. If you're feeling insecure about something, you know, it's just like not cool. But yeah, a lot of men will do that. And I'm just like,
yeah.
Like, yeah, if it's a pattern, if it's like a thing where I'm all the time, I'm like,
needing validation all the time.
Yeah. But like, just to have a moment of humanity. Come on.
Yeah.
Like
the way that he validates her is really
right
on the, on it.
Yeah.
But also going back to the second signet, one thought I had was that, you know, how he got in her head and was like, you kind of got his perspective of finishing her, where like he ended it with like, I fucking love you, and like, I want to take you over the side of the throne and like finish and blah blah blah. Like she got overwhelmed with his feelings and his like thoughts in her head. I thought maybe it could have been her, like maybe like she was reading his mind rather than he was entering hers. And so with that train of thought, it could be that she has like almost like a chameleon signet from Andarna, where she can take other people's signets.
Yeah.
Like talk to the dead here, or like whatever, or, you know, intrinsic here or something.
Yeah.
Cause like, I thought that was a little interesting that, you know, if Xaden can read thoughts, fine, but can he like send his perspective in that way to her? I don't know. He could have, just from that like intense
he did
connection.
that in the first book.
How?
When she was trying to wield lightning for the first time, and she was like for the professor up on the mountain, and Xaden pops into her mind and says, hey, everything cool, like you're far away. And she's like, well, he wants me to wield lightning, but the only time I've ever done that is if I'm like really super emotional. And so he replays their
sex like a memory
from his perspective. So she was watching herself. So
could be something,
you know, that the other thing I would ask is, or consider for a second signet, really strong shielding powers, because she learns to shield so fast, and because she has, I mean, she's got a doorway to Taryn, she's got one to Andarna, she's got one to Sigale, I don't know if I'm saying her name, and then one to Xaden. So it's already like 4 people, and she shields them all pretty well and pretty quickly. So maybe something around like being able to shield more than just herself.
And she could shield from Dane. She probably shielded against Varish, like when he was trying to see her weaknesses and stuff.
And kind of along those lines is like she compartmentalizes pain really, really well.
Yes.
So that seems kind of connected to me, like the fact that she can compartmentalize pain. It's almost like she's shielding herself from her own pain.
Yeah. That's interesting. And speaking of that, the back information that I got from some just like watching interviews with the author is that she based this character on being like chronically ill with Ehlers-Danlos, which is a chronic illness that my mom actually has, undiagnosed, because she didn't want that, you know, on
diagnosis following her everywhere.
But you know, it's loose joints, it's easy bruising, it's just kind of like having a less strong body, because like your muscles and ligaments just don't quite all, and like it runs in the women of my family. My mom's always been scared that I might have it too, so she's always been like on the lookout for like symptoms. So to have a chronically ill like heroine who overcomes, you know, like who shows the courage and strength that chronically ill people have to deal with every day of their lives to just function, on top of being badass heroine who saves the world, you know, and has these accommodations. Like, where are the accommodations and where can she rise above them and like build strength? I thought that was a really unique,
really well done.
It was a really unique take on a heroine. Like, we haven't ever met a chronically ill heroine before, and not in my reading.
Well, I think I've met chronically ill heroines, but the journey is around their illness.
Yeah.
I think that's
not
the
overcoming
difference. It's like, you know, like stories about people who have had cancer or some chronically ill, and then the story is about overcoming
the illness
versus here it's like a part of her, but it's not the journey is not about overcoming Ehlers-Danlos. Did I say it right?
Ehlers-Danlos, yeah.
It's not about overcoming that. It's just like, okay, it's part of my life. And then there's things that come, like you said, like she has the seat, she has the saddle, so she has accommodations for her. And then there's other things like she strengthens her muscles so that she can just...
Which, to be fair, if you're Taryn's writer and you're going through what it sounds like their like writing is like, I would have had a saddle no matter what.
Give me a saddle.
Right? Like,
give me a saddle. Well, that's what they said is like for most people or most writers, if they fall off, they fall off.
Right.
They're not getting picked up again.
Yeah.
So...
And the maneuvers that Taryn was doing, especially in the final battle scene in the second book, like, I don't think the strongest writers would have stayed on.
Potentially not.
I think the saddle was always going to be a thing.
I like how lots of different people are represented. Like her, I love that, but also like we've met someone who's deaf, and so there's sign language involved.
I feel like what Rebecca Yarros did in this book is similar to what Dan Levy did in Schitt's Creek. Have you finished that?
No. I've watched like 4 episodes.
Okay, so Dan Levy's praise, one of the reasons why Schitt's Creek is the you know, just award-winning, incredible show that it is, but also just like the love of so many people, is that he creates a world where it's not the focus of being gay or trans or whatever kind of situation your sex or gender or orientation is. It's not, just like you said with the illness, it's not the focus of like,
it's not the story.
It's not the story. It's just a part of the world. Like it just is. And that's how I felt with Rebecca, where it's like, there's a ton of representation between Jasenia with her signing and people of like having an interracial couple, and, you know, between Xaden and Violet, between having Heaton, the transgender, to, you know, I think Brennan's gay. I know Rhiannon is bi, and, you know, they just, all these different kind of ways to represent were just not the fucking focus. Like it was just like, oh yeah, and he's black, and oh yeah, and like, you know, or whatever. Just
they go
like,
by they.
Yeah, it's just like Heaton did this and they did it. Like it just wasn't like, it wasn't a thing. And I just loved that. I loved that aspect, and the fact that she's a new adult. I didn't know this genre until this book, new adult versus young adult.
I didn't either, but I'm like, where's more stories like
I know.
I don't think a lot of people write for this. I feel like it's, you know, the young adult is so, it's like when Harry Potter came out and Hunger Games, and it was just like, oh yeah, like the YA, you know. And so for a long time I've been looking for YA because these are the kind of stories I like. But you know,
they're a little young, especially as we're getting older.
Yeah, especially as we get, they're just a little too young.
Yeah,
you know?
18-year-old heroine is a little too young.
It's just
for
a
me.
little too young. Yeah. So, and then there's like the stories for women in their 40s.
Yeah,
which is great and cool.
Yeah,
and a lot of those are very, I would say, PG too. And so yeah, I think there's like definitely. This is a good trend.
I just really appreciated, you know, that because she knows her audience, she knows that she's speaking to millennials and Gen Z and younger. She knows that that's the world that we expect, you know, of each other. And so I just love that she gave it to us. And the fact that her dialogue was so, I was telling this to Jasmine before we started recording that like the dialogue was so real. Like it just felt like how you and I talk to each other, how we would text each other, and which is unusual for a book.
The
period. Fuck. Period. Yes. Like
fuck all capitals.
Yeah. Like it wasn't grammatically perfect, and the vocabulary wasn't like difficult to understand context clues if there was a word in there to figure out. There weren't 3 words in a sentence that I didn't know the meaning of. There was like 1 in a page where I'm like, what's that again?
Yep.
And so it was just, much more palatable, quick read kind of dialogue and writing. But it also had a lot of complex themes. It had a lot of complex, world setting. I don't know. I just thought.
Yeah, there was definitely so many moments I was like, is this a self-help book?
Yeah.
Because there's just little things that happen, and it is so, I think, reflective of my current life and like where I've been recently. And so it gives me a moment to think, how would I respond? Mm-hmm. Oh, that's true for me. Mm-hmm. Oh, I would choose something different. Oh, I don't trust myself to make a better choice than that person did. Yeah. Like whatever the little moment is. And some of these are not themes throughout the whole book. It's just like this little thing that happens inside of this chapter.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of another kind of, us taking ourselves back to our 20-something-year-old selves. The way that 20-something-year-olds risk take is so, and like I can remember myself as well. Like in my young 20s, the world is, I feel like
the world is your oyster.
The world is my oyster. The world is my stage. Like I'm here to sing. And, there was just this like, I don't know, recklessness that was available to go after shit that I think Violet does such a good job of mirroring for me to remember that part of myself, and like for all of us to like draw from that. Like we all have that kind of sense of just bold recklessness that a 20-year-old has. That's like, what else do I have? If I die in this battle, then I fucking die, but I could also save the world. So I'm going to take my gamble and do it. Mm-hmm. Like that level of risk taking and just bravery. I felt like that, speaking of self-help, that was one of the things I felt like at this moment in my life was exactly the kind of like being I needed to be around in a heroine, just to, and speaking again to the new adult versus young adult, like an 18-year-old who's still like their brain is super not yet developed versus a 23-year-old or whatever. There's still not fully developed, but there's still that kind of, they're an adult, but they're not.
It's different. 18 is like, you're just getting into college. You don't know what's going on. Yeah. 23 is like, by the time I was 23, I had like taught 100 kids how to read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's just a different.
You're less selfish, but you're still like.
Bold. Yeah. Still bold. I mean, 23, that's like when we built our businesses.
Right. Right.
So when we started to.
So.
It's just, it's interesting because it's like taking a risk from this place of like I think about my 20s as like taking a risk from nothing. Like taking a risk with.
It's like delusional confidence.
I think about that a lot. I used to call it delusional optimism. Yeah. Just like, it's going to work out. Everything's going to work out without really so much of a cushion. Mm-hmm. And now it's like taking a risk, but knowing you have a bit of cushion. Yeah. And I don't know what's more powerful, but so I'm curious to see. We've got 3 more books left.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we wrap, I'm curious what you think about Xaden becoming Venin. Like, do you think they're going to fight? Do you think it'll be like, we'll go from enemies to friends back to enemies, or enemies to lovers back to enemies, where like he'll go full Venin and she'll have to fight him? Do you think she'll cure him and they'll figure it out? Like, what do you predict I think it'll all work out in the end. Yeah. Is my prediction. Like they'll be together in the end. But do they have to fight each other before they become lovers again, or do they always stay on the same team?
My prediction is she's going to stay strong and steady. Mm-hmm. And she's going to be like, we're going to figure this out. We're going to work this out. And I think it's going to be him that has an issue. Mm-hmm. I feel like he might have to go away for a while and come back. Like, I think he's going to struggle. I actually wouldn't even be surprised if some of the later books are written more from his perspective.
I think, what's the Persephone, the mythology? Is it, no, it's Orpheus and Eurydice, where Eurydice gets stuck in the underworld and Orpheus goes to rescue her out of the underworld. I think it's the reverse. I think that he's going to get sucked in.
That's what I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But then she'll have to convert. Yep. Get him back out and get him back. And then they both have to
convert.
Yeah. Oh, I think because she has those dreams from the sage in the second book. The sage keeps haunting her dreams, saying like, you silly human, you converted for something as stupid as love. Like, you'll fall. You will fall. You will join us. And like at the end of the book, I was like, was she having Xaden's dreams? Because it turns out Xaden was having those dreams too, where he was telling him, you're going to fall, you're going to fall, you're going to join us. And then he does. And Violet's also having those dreams. And at first I was like, maybe she's just having them through him. But no, I think that she will fall and rescue him.
Yeah. I think a lot of this too is like, when I was thinking about, I mean, I've just finished book 1 again, right? But thinking about the Venom and thinking about Dane's storyline.
I don't know where he's
about going. Like the Jack storyline that's coming up. It's a lot of like, not like second chances necessarily, but like redemption. And I think as I was thinking through that and thinking about the Venom, I thought, you know what? I bet the majority of the Venom didn't actually do it for the power. They did it for something else.
Right.
And just landed in that place.
Yeah.
And then they are what they are.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to see how many of the Venom are actually like fucking evil beings and how much of them did this for a certain reason that we could completely understand.
Right. Right. Like Xaden drawing power because he was almost dead.
Exactly.
And the fact that there's Venom on the outside of the wards and on the inside of the wards. And those are two, like, it's not like Jack is in cahoots with the sage. Like, he is a Venom, but he's not being trained or, you know, he's not like part of them. He's on
like
the inside.
Rogue.
Yeah. He's like helpful to the cause. He probably has some mind connection to the sage where like he broke the ward stone to help the cause of the Venom. But, you know, I just imagine, which is going to be also very interesting for Xaden as the mind reader person, if he can communicate now with the major Venom people, the leaders of the Venom cause, that might help them, you know, like the revolution. I don't know. It's very
and thus the theme is developing around controlling your mind, controlling your thoughts.
Yeah. And yeah, that was another self-help lesson of just like, no one can control your emotions but you. And, you know, you have the ultimate power. And if you like lose control of yourself and your emotions, then your power is just like being flushed almost. Like it's just going everywhere and diffused rather than concentrated and effective. And I thought that was a very effective lesson for me as well.
Well, we've got 3 books left.
Oh, I really hope they come out soon.
1 is coming, and I've heard 1 is coming end of this year. We also know that it's been picked up by Michael B. Jordan's film
on
Amazon. So that's really exciting.
Oh, last thing.
How can I be?
Who are your people for casting for Xaden and Violet?
I don't know about those 2.
Yeah.
I don't have a person for those 2. I know the author has gone on saying Idris Elba for Taryn.
Yes, I heard her say that too.
Yes. That's exactly. Sometimes I hear Idris Elba and sometimes I hear Optimus Prime. The Optimus Prime voice in my head for Transformers. Yeah, I mean that's it. And then I think I saw someone say Austin Butler for Liam. Austin Butler played Elvis.
Oh yes.
But he's typically bright blonde.
That. Yeah. Or like one of the Hemsworth guys.
Yeah, I could see a Hemsworth. And then
and we talked about this before. You see Xaden as black, right?
Yeah.
I see Xaden as more Hawaiian. Because like that signet thing, or not signet,
the rebellion relic.
The rebellion relic on his arm kind of reminded me of like the Hawaiian.
I could also see, I think when I first read the book, I read it as more Middle Eastern. And then now after reading it a second time, it kind of felt more black. So I don't know, but
it's very interesting.
But yeah, for Violet, I just don't know enough actresses kind of that.
I kind of hope they're both no names.
That would be fucking awesome.
I really hope that they build their careers out of this series.
Yeah.
And like, you know,
it's
like Daniel Radcliffe with Harry Potter. It's just like,
they can put some other big names on the, you know, make whatever.
Idris Elba can be Taryn.
Exactly. Okay, I'm watching.
Yeah, I literally would not care who was acting what. I would hope that they and it's good that Rebecca is part of the producing team to like cast and stuff. But
give me a call. I would love to be a part of this.
Oh my
I don't know
God.
how. I would love to be in the writer's room. I would love to be. That would be so great. The other one is Sigale. I saw somewhere Charlize Theron.
ooh, yeah, I could get that.
You know, it's also a good. What's her face? Brad Pitt's ex, Angelina Jolie.
Oh, for her?
She has a good voice for it. Yeah,
Huh.
she has a good voice for it. Kind of like that. Like,
I heard Sigourney Weaver in my head.
really?
Uh-huh.
Wow, I did not hear.
Like
I heard more of like a breathy, like lower
Yeah.
kind of voice. Sigourney Weaver does not.
But picture her in like Avatar and stuff. Like she has kind of a, she can do it.
Yeah, potentially.
She could do that, but like just like persona wise, I feel like I was thinking like Sigourney, just probably because of Avatar. Like I don't know, there's some
Yeah. So anyway,
cool.
This is officially our longest episode ever.
I hope y'all enjoyed our very first video episode, and please let us know which of you mother puppers have read it. What are your theories that you support or deny of what we proposed today? What were your thoughts on the relationship and favorite moments, all the goods. And we'll see you next episode.
See you soon.